While on a walk, I ran into my ex-boyfriend and his mother. Auntie said, "You two haven't met before, have you?" Not only have we met, but in private, we practically kissed each other's lips off. During the winter break, I didn't feel like moving much. I was wearing thick pajamas as I went for a walk with my mom. We hadn't been walking for long when my mum spotted an auntie in the distance and greeted her. She casually said to me, "This is my new colleague." I squinted for a while before I could clearly see the auntie standing next to a guy with a great figure and impeccable style, probably her son. So, the love story of a face-loving dog begins here, right? I quickly nudged my mom and asked, "Is Auntie's son dating anyone? If not, remember to introduce us." My mom gave me an okay sign and pulled me forward to meet them. The auntie smiled warmly and said, "You're out for a walk too? Is this your mother?" I looked left and right before finally realizing that the auntie was referring to me as my mum's mother. My mom's smile froze. "This is my daughter. She's just back for winter break and doesn't care much about dressing up." The guy stood in the shadows of the trees, wearing a black face mask, and let out a soft chuckle. I cringed so hard I could have dug out a 3-bedroom apartment with my toes. The auntie was also incredibly embarrassed and quickly changed the subject. "I remember your daughter also went to First High School, right? Which year did she graduate?" My mom replied, "Just last year." The auntie pulled the guy from behind her and said, "What a coincidence. My son also graduated last year. Do you two know each other?" I looked up. The streetlight illuminated his face, those deep, expressive eyes, and the familiar red mole on his neck. "Damn, isn't this my ex-boyfriend?" Seeing us lock eyes, the auntie asked again, "You two know each other, right?" We both spoke in unison. "No, we don't." Almost simultaneously, we turned our faces away, refusing to look at each other. "But in reality, auntie, not only do we know each other, but we also explored the content of biology and hygiene classes together in secluded spots throughout our 3 years of high school. We might be the people who know each other best, from body to soul." Over there, the auntie and my mom were chatting animatedly, while he and I stood awkwardly to the side, the atmosphere so cold it could freeze. Finally, Zixiao broke the silence. "Your outfit is quite unique." I stepped on his foot. He grunted in pain, and the auntie turned to him. "What's wrong?" Zixiao smiled lightly and said, "Just stepped on by a passing puppy." The auntie said, "As long as you're okay," and continued chatting with my mom. Zixiao called out to her, "Mom, let's get a pet dog too. We can bring it home, and I'll teach it how to obediently listen to its owner." His words were directed at his mom, but his eyes were fixed on me. The auntie complained, "I'm already tired of raising you. Why would I want a dog?" Then she looked at me and smiled warmly. "Wanna, why don't you two exchange WeChat? You are both studying in the same city. It'll be good to look out for each other in the future." Zixiao gave a half smile and directly pulled up his WeChat QR code. Under the eager gazes of both our moms, I took out my phone and reluctantly scanned his code. The person I had blocked was now back in my WeChat chat interface. The last message we exchanged was an argument. He had said, "Fine, go ahead. You really have guts." I replied, "More guts than you. I'll find someone better than you in every way. Get lost." It was a far cry from the well-behaved, innocent girl image I usually projected. Seeing my mom peek over, I quickly turned off my phone screen and pretended to be obedient. They added each other. "I'll have to trouble Brother Zixiao in the future." He repeated the words, "Brother Zixiao," and actually smiled, looking quite pleased. "No need to be so formal, little sister Wanna." He enunciated those 4 words in a low, clear tone, eerily reminiscent of the times he used to corner me at the back door of the classroom, kiss me while keeping an eye on the broken surveillance camera, and call my name 1 syllable at a time. For some reason, my heart started racing. My mom urged me to pursue things with Zixiao, saying that since our parents knew each other, we were well acquainted. I thought to myself, pursue what? I've already explored every inch of him, and I'm tired of it. Out loud, I said, "Sure." Sure. But as soon as I opened WeChat, I sent Zixiao straight back to the block list. The next day, however, I received a call from Zixiao. It wasn't him calling. The background music was deafeningly loud. "Su Wanna, Zixiao is drunk." Come pick him up at XXKTV, room B19. Get here now. With that, they hung up. When I tried calling back, no one answered. They didn't even give me a chance to refuse. Damn you, Zijao. I cursed under my breath, resignedly pulled on my down jacket, and headed to the KTV. Zijao was indeed heavily drunk, with several empty bottles, red wine, white wine, and beer scattered around his feet. The door to the private room opened, and I recognized several familiar faces. All of Zijiao's close friends from high school. Back when we were secretly dating, they were the ones covering for us. When I walked in, they grinned and greeted me. Hey, sister-in-law is here. I replied coldly. We broke up centuries ago. Who's your sister-in-law? They chuckled knowingly, and the leader of the group stopped singing and walked over, handing me a room key. Sister-in-law, we're all clumsy. We'll leave Brother Zhao in your care. Of course, I didn't take it. I kicked Zijao lightly, but he didn't react at all. Damn, he really was drunk. I thought for 2 seconds and came up with a prank. I went back and asked them to help me carry Zijao to a hotel. They grinned mischievously, and as they closed the door, one of them even asked, Sister-in-law, do you need us to buy some ... protection? I cursed inwardly, but smiled on the outside. No need. You can go now. The room fell silent. Zijao lay on the bed, his collar askew, his sleeping face peaceful. I turned on all the lights and pinched his cheek until it deformed, but he didn't wake up. Perfect, he definitely wasn't faking it. I took out my lip gloss, lifted the hem of his shirt, and planned to draw a turtle on his stomach. Then I deposted it on social media for everyone to admire the school heartthrob's graceful appearance. I bent down, holding the lip gloss, and focused on drawing. The turtle shell was done. The 4 legs were done, and the abs were. Wait, why are there abs? When not flexed, the stomach should be flat, right? Slowly, I looked up and saw Zijiao's eyes open. A hint of a smile on his face. Suwana, your current position is giving me certain ideas. My mind went blank for a moment before I heard him say meaningfully, How are my abs? I worked out just for you. I straightened up calmly. Not that great. They're miles behind my current boyfriend's. Truth be told, I didn't have a boyfriend at the moment. Zijao didn't comment. Instead, he stretched out his arm, and my face was suddenly pressed against his AB. Warm, firm, and familiar to the touch. His voice was light. If they're not great, why did you stare for so long? Suwana, you're as stubborn as ever. Damn. The lip gloss I'd smeared on his ABs was now stuck to my face. I struggled to push him away, but wherever I touched, it felt wrong. Then I heard him groan softly. Stop moving. It dawned on me, and my entire body stiffened. Zijiao sat up, grabbed the collar of my clothes, and somehow, in a blur, our positions switched. Now I was the one at his mercy. He used his thumb to wipe the lip gloss off my face and chuckled softly. Suwan, the only hard thing about you is your mouth. I turned my head away in embarrassment and anger. You were pretending to be drunk. Zijiao lowered his head, burying his face in the crook of my neck. I could feel something pressing against my leg. He laughed softly. You tell me, if a man is truly drunk, can he still ... perform? I pushed against his shoulders. Get off me. He effortlessly pinned my wrist with one hand, lifted me with the other, and shifted me forward slightly. With a click, my hand was tied to the bedpost. Zijiao looked at me, his eyes shimmering, a gentle smile on his face. I drank a lot today. You know, I'll do anything when I'm drunk, right? Of course, I knew what he was like when drunk. His parents were workaholics, rarely home. During our 3 years in high school, I'd picked him up countless times. Although we never crossed the final line, some moments that still made me blush and go weak in the knees happened when he was half drunk and half awake. A sober Zijiao was intense, but a drunk Zijiao was even more so. I was often the one begging for mercy. I struggled even harder. Zijiao chuckled softly. Wana, I won't do anything. Just stay with me for a while. True to his word, he didn't touch me again. He pulled up the blanket and lay down beside me. His arms stretched out, resting on my waist. His breathing was steady and even, as if he'd fallen asleep. Slowly I relaxed and stared at him intently. No matter how much time passed, seeing this face still made my heart race. You're so handsome, Zijao. But damn it, why did you cheat back then? On Friday, my mom called me urgently while she was at work. One of her subordinates was getting married, but the bridesmaid and groomsmen were close contacts and had been taken away for quarantine. I had a bad feeling. So? My mom said loudly, so, they'd like to ask you to be the bridesmaid. They didn't even know me. It was obvious my mom felt sorry for her subordinate and roped me into this. My mom used a mix of threats and incentives, like whether I still wanted my allowance or the big red envelope from the bride. I immediately gave in. Trying on the dress, right? I'll go right away. When I arrived at the bride's house, she looked at me like a savior and handed me the bridesmaid dress. Wanna try this on and see if it fits. The original bridesmaid must have been quite slender. I barely squeezed into the dress, but the zipper at the back wouldn't close. I cracked the door open and asked, "Can someone help me with the zipper?" Everyone outside was busy decorating, and it was too noisy for anyone to hear me. I gave up and went back into the room to try again. Suddenly, the door was pushed open, and then closed. Click, it was locked. I looked up. Zhao walked in, dressed in a pure black suit, looking impossibly handsome. I was stunned. "What are you doing here?" He replied, "I heard you were the bridesmaid, so I came to be the groomsman." After a pause, Zhao added, "Didn't you need help?" I replied awkwardly, "Yeah, the zipper's stuck. Can you help me pull it up?" With a soft sound, the zipper was pulled all the way down, leaving most of my back exposed to the cool air. I clutched my chest and jumped. "Pull it up." Zhao apologized insincerely. "Sorry, I didn't know." He slowly pulled the zipper up, his fingers occasionally brushing against my skin. The shivering sensation almost reached my heart. Finally, when the zipper was all the way up, I was covered in a thin layer of sweat. Zhao's hand remained on my shoulder, as he stared at our reflection in the mirror for a long time without moving. The mirror was unique, like a picture frame. He stood behind me, hands on my shoulders, wearing a crisp suit while I was in a pristine off-the-shoulder gown. For a moment I felt dazed, almost as if this were a wedding photo. Through the mirror he looked at me and suddenly said, "This is exactly how I imagined our wedding." Before I could respond, the bride's family knocked on the door. "Wanna, are you done changing? Come out, so we can go over tomorrow's schedule." I brushed Zhao's hand away without a word and walked out. The schedule wasn't complicated, and the next day, everything went smoothly. Except during the toast segment. For some reason, the groom gestured for me to drink on the bride's behalf. A glass of white wine was handed to me, and I didn't know whether to refuse or accept it. A pair of slender, well-defined hands reached over my shoulder and took the glass. Zhao smiled, but his eyes were cold. "I'll drink for her." He tilted his head back and down the entire glass. Anyone could see he was unhappy, but he maintained his politeness. The groom hesitated, and the bride shot him a reproachful look. Zhao ignored their silent exchange and turned to the bride. "I need to borrow your bridesmaid for a moment." With that, he grabbed my wrist and walked away. My parents and his parents watched, stunned. I wanted to explain, but he had already dragged me out of the banquet hall. Zhao's voice was filled with anger. "Why are you so obedient in front of others? Can't you stand up to them like you do with me?" I tried to shake off his hand, but he held on tightly, refusing to let go. Zhao pressed me against the bathroom mirror, tilting my chin up, his tone fierce. "Look at your face. It's all red. You have a weak stomach, yet you drank so much. Are you crazy?" Yes, he never let me drink before. There were times when I was more aroused than him, but he held back. He took better care of my body than his own. But, I said, "What gives you the right to talk to me like this? We broke up a long time ago. Don't you know that?" He frowned at me. "But I never agreed to it. And your mom said you were single." Thinking back to the provocative text message I received during our Cold War last year. The photo showed Zhao asleep, a sight I'd never seen before, and a fair, delicate hand caressing his cheek. Suddenly I felt exhausted. "Please stop bothering me, okay?" I pushed him away and walked out. Zhao pursed his lips and followed me, saying, "Fine, I'll chase you again. Suwana, I won't let this go." My younger cousins invited me to go car top camping, excitedly describing it. Tomorrow will be sunny, and at night we'll see tons of stars. If we're lucky, we might even see a meteor shower. The scenery in the outskirts was indeed beautiful. Cars were scattered around the campsite, and in the center were several bonfires for guests to socialize around. My cousins had already arrived and pulled me over to sit down. We were playing a game of king. A deck of cards was dealt randomly, and the person who drew the king card became the king for that round. The king would assign 2 numbered players to interact, like number 1 hugging number 2, or number 3 kissing number 4. These high schoolers were bolder than we were back then. The king assigned 2 boys to stare into each other's eyes while holding water in their mouths. They both burst out laughing, spraying water all over each other. Hugging my younger cousin, I laughed uncontrollably. Suddenly, a group of people from the neighboring bonfire came over and asked if they could join us. Everyone said, "Sure, the more the merrier." But I remained silent. The guy in the black down jacket and grey cap, wasn't that Zi Zhao? What a coincidence. He clearly saw me too, but acted as if he didn't, calmly finding a spot to sit down. With new players joining, the cards were reshuffled. Zi Zhao sat right across from me, playing with his cards, his long, nimble fingers reminding me of the past. My heart raced and I decided to make a run for it. The moment I stood up, I heard the king shout. I assigned the ace of diamonds and the ace of hearts to do push-ups face to face. Everyone checked their cards. I had a bad feeling and unfolded mine. Damn, it was the ace of diamonds. The king was still urging. Where are they? Where are they? Reluctantly, I raised my hand. The ace of diamonds is here. Out of the corner of my eye, I saw Zi Zhao whisper something to the guy next to him before standing up and raising his card. I mean the ace of hearts. Of course, I wasn't foolish enough to expose him for swapping cards. Compared to a complete stranger, doing this with Zi Zhao was less daunting. The moment he stood up, the screams and cheers from the crowd nearly blew the tent roof off. My younger cousin poked me. "Sis, he's so handsome, and he looks like he's in great shape." "You're lucky." Watching Zi Zhao walk toward me, I felt my legs go weak. I heard him ask, "How many push-ups?" "You didn't specify." His tone was typical Zi Zhao, confident and slightly arrogant. The king, also a young guy, took the bait and said, 50. Can you handle it? Zi Zhao replied casually. Of course. I wanted to cry. I couldn't handle it. Even if Zi Zhao did just 5 push-ups over me, I'd be trembling. But I had no choice. I was pushed to the center and was about to lie down when Zi Zhao said, "Wait." He took off his jacket, laid it on the ground, and gestured for me to lie on it. His friends started hollering, with and ahs echoing around. I lay down, and Zi Zhao did the same. He began doing push-ups. Every time he lowered himself, our breaths mingled, carrying a faint hint of alcohol. It was Zi Zhao's scent. Everyone counted loudly. 1, 2, 3, 4. His arms braced on either side of my shoulders, his shadow completely enveloping me. I couldn't see the starry sky, only the light in his eyes. When the count reached 9, he whispered softly, "Don't look at me like that." My brain lagged for a second, and I asked dumbly, "Huh?" He used one hand to support himself, took off his cap with the other, and placed it over my head. The brim completely blocked my vision. I heard him chuckle softly. I might lose control, with my sight taken away. All I could feel was his warm breath and the occasional brush of his lips against my neck as he lowered himself. My heart pounded like a drum. Thankfully, everyone was screaming and teasing, drowning out our sounds. By the 37th push-up, Zi Zhao showed no signs of slowing down, as if it were effortless. For some reason, I remembered my cousin's words. He looks like he's in great shape. Yeah, no kidding. 47 almost done. I sighed in relief. Then, I heard the sound of fireworks shooting into the sky. The counting stopped and light poured into the cap. Suddenly the cap was lifted. I saw the dazzling fireworks and Zi Zhao's eyes, brighter than the fireworks themselves. Then, everything went dark as Zi Zhao kissed me. As the brilliant colors faded from the sky, and the wind rustled through the dry grass, the crowd stood up to watch the fireworks. In that unnoticed moment, the boy I once liked didn't watch the fireworks or complete the punishment. Instead, with one hand on the ground and hidden under the cap. He kissed me over and over again. The fireworks ended, and the push-ups were done. My lips still tingled from his kiss, and suddenly, I felt overwhelmed with emotion. I pushed Zizhao away, stood up and walked off. Everyone was stunned. Zizhao didn't even grab his jacket before chasing after me. I heard his friend shout, "Brother Zhao, where are you going?" Zizhao replied with a half smile, "Chasing a girl. Don't worry about it." I heard my younger cousin exclaim, "Wow," and even cheer him on. "Brother-in-law, I'm rooting for you. ... What a little brat." The campsite was well secured, with staff patrolling with flashlights. I finally found a quiet spot and sat down. Zizhao followed me and stood there, watching me silently. I covered my face with my hands, not wanting him to see my reddened eyes. "Stop looking at me. Just go away." He hugged me tightly, pressing my face against his chest. "Just think of me as shameless, okay?" he whispered. "Wanna, I can't let you go." The familiar embrace, the warmth I'd missed for so long, but it wasn't mine anymore. The suppressed emotions finally burst out, and I pushed him away forcefully. "If you really couldn't let me go, why did you cheat back then?" Zizhao was taken aback. "Me? Cheat? You were the one who left." I showed him the text message, the photo clear as day. Seeing that delicate hand caressing his sleeping face again still stung. Zizhao stared at the photo and cursed under his breath. "Damn it," I said, "you've always had a lot of admirers. And I knew human nature was unpredictable. But I never thought you'd betray me too. ... Double quotes, I choked up, unable to speak further. Zizhao asked, "Why didn't you come to me back then?" "Back then? We were in a cold war." How could I swallow my pride and confront him? The one who cared more lost. So I broke up with him and he never tried to stop me. Wasn't that enough? In the adult world, you don't have to tear each other apart to move on. Zizhao punched a tree angrily, his voice tinged with frustration. "You blocked me. I asked your best friend to contact you. And she told me you'd fallen for someone else. I had no idea about the photo. I thought you were the one who'd moved on." I asked, "Then, who? Who is the girl in the photo?" Zizhao irritably dialed a number. "Zishi, get your ass over here. G campsite, now." Not long after, a girl who bore a striking resemblance to Zizhao appeared before me, grinning. It was hard to dislike someone who immediately apologized and called me sister-in-law. Zishi explained that she'd just returned from abroad that day, had too much to drink and started sending messages from her siblings' phones to show off her handsome brother. She had no idea she'd sent it to me. She held out her hands, showing the Cartier ring on her finger and the red mole on her hand, exactly like in the photo. Zishi sighed dramatically, wrapped an arm around my waist, and said, "My dear Wana, you wouldn't let Zizhao scold me, right? Please forgive me." She was so good at coaxing that I couldn't resist. I nodded. Zishi fluttered off like a butterfly, but before leaving she said meaningfully, "Sweetheart, based on a woman's intuition, I think your so-called best friend is a fake." Zishi left, and Zizhao remained standing in front of me. I hesitantly asked, "Then this past year, have you ... Have you been with other girls? Have you treated them the way you treated me? Have you?" He quickly replied, "One troublemaker is enough for me. I'm lazy." I climbed into the rooftop tent. My cousin answered a phone call, chatting away in lovey-dovey tones. After hanging up, she looked rather sheepish and said, "Sis, my boyfriend is coming over ... double quotes." How could I not recognize that mushy, clingy vibe? It was exactly how I used to be. I had no choice but to say, "Off you go, then don't keep him waiting." She scrambled to get dressed. As she climbed down, she turned to warn me, "The campsite should be safe. There's a one-touch alarm on the right. Hit it if you get scared." "Okay. So you do know I'm scared." After she left, I stared out the tent's small window at the night sky and listened to the wind rustling through the dry grass, my palms turning cold. The night was pitch black, and all those stories Grandma used to tell about hanging ghosts and women in red flooded my mind in an instant. I tossed and turned, unable to fall asleep. My phone suddenly vibrated. It was the first message ID received from Zixiao since ID reluctantly unblocked him. Are you alone in the tent? How did he know? Had he been keeping tabs on me? I typed slowly. Yeah. He wasted no time calling me. Wanna? He just said my name. Nothing more. It reminded me of back when I was in seclusion for a competition. We hadn't seen each other for a month, and he'd called me. Sounding so wronged, whispering over and over. Wanna. Wanna. He never mentioned missing me. Not once, just repeated my name. Exactly like he was doing now. Still, it was better than nothing. At least I had someone to talk to fill the empty silence and chase away some of the fear. I could hear the wind on his end and asked, Haven't you gone home yet? Zixiao said, Open the tent flap. I did as he said and poked my head out. There he stood by the car, hands in his pockets, looking up at me. The bright moonlight spilled over him, making him look tall, relaxed, and devastatingly handsome. He drawled lazily, I'm afraid of the dark and ghosts. Can I crash here with you? It's me who's afraid of the dark and ghosts, for heaven's sake. The tent suddenly felt cramped and tiny as soon as Zixiao stepped inside. I huddled in the corner, wrapped tightly in my quilt, while he slowly began to take off his clothes. Jacket ... Sweater ... Shirt ... Shirt. He glanced at me, then slowly grabbed the hem of his shirt and lifted it. So this was what people meant by a feast for their eyes. I swallowed hard and quickly grabbed his hand to stop him. What are you doing? It's freezing in here. He arched an eyebrow. I feel hot. Seeing me fall silent, Zixiao tugged my arm and pulled me into his arms, his fingers brushing over the layers of my clothes. Sleeping in a turtleneck sweater, aren't you burning up? His fingers grazed my neck, sending a shiver down my spine. I couldn't help but beg. We just cleared up the misunderstanding. Can you give me a little time to adjust? Zixiao said flatly. Do you know how to write the 4 characters for reuniting with a lost love? Or the 5 characters for absence makes the heart grow fonder? His tone was thick with ambiguity, like a leopard ready to pounce. I tried to scramble away on hands and knees, but he tightened his grip, holding me even closer. Don't move, he said. Just let me hold you for a while. Sensing something stirring in him, I froze, not daring to breathe. His voice was almost a sigh. Suwana, when we were apart, I couldn't stop thinking, was there another man who held you like this? I whispered, No one. There never was. How could I like anyone else when I'd already had the best? But he said, During that time I was consumed by jealousy, jealous of that imaginary rival. Jealous to the point of madness. True to his word, Zixiao didn't do anything else. He waited until he'd calmed down, then finally let me go. I'd been too scared to sleep a moment ago, but with him lying beside me, an inexplicable sense of peace washed over me. Sleepiness crept in, and I drifted off into a dream. I dreamed of my 17th birthday. It had fallen right in the middle of my training seclusion. I'd been cramming for exams late into the night when I got a text from Zixiao. In the dead of night, he'd climbed over the wall to bring me a birthday cake. He'd just lit the candles when the patrolling security guards spotted the light. I'd panicked, trying to blow them out immediately. But Zixiao refused to let me, insisting I make a wish first. I'd made my wish in a frantic hurry and blown out the candles. The moment the flames flickered and died, the security guard pushed the door open. Zixiao had grabbed me and jumped out the window with me in his arms. We'd hidden under the bushes, watching as the bright flashlight beam swept over us again and again. The guard had cursed, taken the cake, and thrown it away. I'd let out a huge sigh of relief, but my heart ached a little too. I'd been about to stand up when Zixiao pulled me back into his arms. He said, I snuck a bite just now. Wanna taste it? Before I could answer, he leaned down and kissed me. It was sweet strawberry flavor ... I was woken up by cheers and shouts. Dazed and sleepy, I thought I was still 17 in my dream. Without a second thought, I reached out and wrapped my arms around Zixiao's neck. He stiffened. That's when I finally came to my senses and realized what I was doing. I quickly let go, my face burning. But Zixiao wasn't having it. He closed in on me, backing me into the corner of the tent, his eyes dark and dangerous. "After getting your fill," he said, "you ought to leave a tip, don't you think?" Just as everyone else in the campsite was yelling about shooting stars, the small window of my tent was shut in a hurry. That night, I didn't see any shooting stars. All I saw were stars dancing before my eyes. Who knew that even just a little taste of this could leave me feeling so utterly spent? 6 at dinner, Mum brought up Zizhao. "The other day at the wedding banquet, Zizhao pulled you aside by the hand, didn't he?" My heart skipped a beat, but I forced myself to stay calm. "Yeah." Inside, though, I was panicking, trying to figure out how to break the news to Mom and Dad that Zizhao and I were back together. But Mom's next words caught me completely off guard. I subtly asked Zizhao's mom about you two. She said Zizhao has an ex-girlfriend he can't forget. "I don't think you two are a good match." I choked on my food. "Mum, the ex-girlfriend he can't forget is sitting right across from you." Mum put a rib on my plate and went on. "Heard they started dating back in high school. TSK. Lucky you were such a good girl if you'd gotten into puppy love back then. You never would have gotten into university, and no way." I silently gnawed on the rib, abandoning all plans to tell them the truth on the spot. "There's plenty of time, Zizhao. We'll take it slow." Dad, who was sipping soup, chimed in too. "If you just like his looks, there's a really handsome young whiz kid who just joined my company. I'll arrange for you two to meet in a couple of days." I suddenly lost my appetite. Dad must have thought I was upset, because he quickly added, "Cutting your losses early is a good thing. Remember, there are plenty of fish in the sea. Never go for a guy who's still hung up on his ex." Not long after that, I met the so-called young whiz kid. His name was Tang He. He'd just come back from studying abroad to do research. He was really handsome, sure, but he seemed a little distracted the whole time. Though honestly, it didn't matter. I liked Zizhao, end of story. Zizhao texted me, asking where I was. I thought and thought, then decided to make up an excuse to brush him off. I couldn't let him find out that my parents thought he was unreliable and were trying to set me up with someone else. Knowing his personality, he'd probably show up at our house with a bunch of gifts the next day to formally meet his future parents-in-law. Tang, he looked like he'd been dragged here against his will too. We made polite small talk for a bit, then soon drifted off into our own thoughts. His suit cufflinks were quite unique, a pair of purplish cat's eye stones. I stared at them for a while, wondering if I should buy Zizhao a pair too. His birthday was coming up soon. Just then, someone strode over and rapped their knuckles on the table. I looked up and was met with Zizhao's blazing eyes. Miraculously, he was still smiling, but every word he said sounded like it was gritted out through his teeth. "I thought you said you were doing research. Where's the research at?" Tang He observed the scene for a moment, then asked, "And who might you be?" I was about to answer, but Zizhao cut me off. "I'm her boyfriend." Tang He raised an eyebrow, looking unsurprised. I was so embarrassed I wanted to crawl into a hole. Afraid Tang He would go back and tattle to Dad, I quickly said, "He's joking. I'm single." Zizhao's face turned pitch black. His fingers tightened around my wrist involuntarily. Tang He noticed and said coolly, "She be hurt." Zizhao looked chagrined and let go, then subconsciously took my wrist in his palm, rubbing it gently. But he quickly realized what he was doing and snapped, "She's my girlfriend. I know how to take care of her." Tang He just chuckled noncommittally. Even though he wasn't interested in me at all, he had excellent manners. Somehow, he'd picked up on the tension between Zizhao and me, because when he left, he politely asked if I needed a ride home. I quickly declined. No, thank you." He nodded and turned to leave, but I called out to him again. "Brother Tang, could you not tell my dad about this?" Tang He nodded casually and walked away. I let out a sigh of relief. But before I could catch my breath, someone grabbed my chin and turned my face toward them. Zizhao was scowling at me. "Brother Tang, why have I never heard you call me Brother Zizhao?" It was true. We'd done just about everything together back in the day, but I'd never mustered up the courage to call him brother. It felt totally natural to call other guys that. But with Zizhao, those two words just felt too shy, too intimate to say out loud. Seeing me hesitate, Zizhao got annoyed. He let go of my face and strode off without a word. I quickly chased after him, clinging to his waist and refusing to let go, acting like a spoiled child. He stopped and glared at me. Let go. I shook my head stubbornly. No way was I letting go. I wasn't that stupid. He ignored me, dragging me along as he walked. There was fluffy snow on the ground, and the streets were almost empty. I slid down his body and wrapped my arms around his legs instead. In my haste, I accidentally bumped into something. Zixiao froze, then gritted his teeth. Move your hand down a little. I looked up at him, my eyes welling with tears, feeling wronged. Zixiao's tone softened immediately, and he started to comfort me. You're the one who was on a date with someone else, aren't you? If I'd been the one out with another girl, you'd have skinned me alive, wouldn't you? I thought back to high school, when I'd gotten bad intel that Zixiao was drinking milk tea with a pretty girl. I de-stormed into the milk tea shop in a rage only to find that the pretty girl was his aunt. I pulled a complete 180 on the spot, saying, Zixiao, did you forget to turn in your physics homework again? Zixiao had been this close to laughing, but he'd played along, saying, I'll do it right away. Then I'd stormed off, seething with jealousy, as his aunt earnestly told me to keep an eye on Zixiao. Remembering that mortifying incident, my tears vanished instantly. Zixiao pulled me up to my feet, and I suddenly felt cold on the soles of my feet. Looking down, I saw that snow had seeped into my cotton boots. I wanted to cry. Zixiao smirked at me. Call me Brother Zixiao, and I'll carry you. I wasn't about to give in that easily. I stomped forward, my boots squelching with melted snow, one step at a time. He let out a low laugh. Before I knew it, he'd scooped me up into his arms and slung me over his shoulder. Suwana, he muttered. You really love driving me crazy, don't you? I made up a flimsy excuse to smooth things over with Zixiao. Judging by his expression, he definitely didn't believe me. But for some reason, he didn't press me for the truth. Sigh. I really had no choice. My parents were extremely strict with me before I turned 18. If Mom found out Zixiao and I had been dating since high school, I swear she'd kick me out of the house. Since I couldn't give him the official title of boyfriend yet, I tried to make it up to him in other ways. That day I called Zixiao, intending to ask him how he wanted to celebrate his birthday. But the call was answered by a girl. She said, Zixiao's asleep. Don't call again. Her voice was a little hoarse and distorted, but it sounded oddly familiar. Before I could figure out who it was, she hung up. When I called back, her phone was turned off. Damn it. I was so angry I paced back and forth in my bedroom several times before I could calm down. Then I called Zixi. Zixi, who had nothing better to do at home, was thrilled at the chance to help me catch a cheater. Under her guidance, I dug up Zixiao's old Apple ID and password, and successfully tracked his phone's location. Standing downstairs at the hotel, Zixi sighed in admiration. Modern technology really is a godsend for catching cheaters, isn't it? I couldn't even force a smile. My mind was racing with all the terrible things Zixiao might be doing inside. Zixi seemed to have some connections at the hotel, because she effortlessly got his room number, then dragged me over to the door, looking excited. Complimentary late-night delivery for the room. We've got all the toys you need, she called out, knocking loudly. The door opened a crack and a girl's wary voice came from inside. What kind of toys? I froze. It was Chen Siwei, my deskmate from high school, and she was only wearing a leopard print bikini. Before I could process what I was seeing, Zixi kicked the door open. Chen Siwei couldn't dodge in time and tripped, falling onto the carpet. Zixi grinned, hauling Chen Siwei up by the arm and tutting in mock amazement. Wearing lingerie in the dead of winter. Young people really are fearless when it comes to being cold, huh? Tall and muscular from years of martial arts training, Zixi held Chen Siwei like she was a tiny chicken. Chen Siwei's face turned bright red with anger. How dare you break into my room? I ignored her, marching straight inside to find Zixiao. There he was, lying sprawled on the soft king-size bed, not even covered with a blanket, just a bath towel draped loosely over his waist. I flipped on the light. His cheeks were flushed an unnatural red, his forehead covered in sweat, his eyebrows furrowed like he was in pain. My blood boiled. I grabbed a pillow and started hitting Chin Siwei with it. What did you do to him? Chin Siwei glared at me coldly. I invited him here in your name. And I might have slipped him a little something in his drink. Don't act like you're some devoted lover. While you were broken up with him, he wasted away from heartbreak. That you were out on a date with another guy at a cafe. Do you even have a heart? I was stunned. It was you who lied to both of us. You told me he'd definitely cheated on me, and you told him I'd fallen for an upperclassman. How dare you say such things to me? Chiwei Sniwei. If you two really loved each other that much, would you have let me drive a wedge between you so easily? Zishi grabbed Tun Siwei by the face, looking appalled. How can there be such a hypocritical girl like you? Come on, let's go have a nice little chat, sister. She dragged Chin Siwei out of the room, slamming the door shut behind them. I rushed over to Zi Xiao, panicking, and pressed the back of my hand to his forehead. She drugged him. Drugged him. Damn it. Zi Xiao's entire body was burning up, his skin slick with sweat. I had zero experience taking care of sick people. My first instinct was to grab my phone and call 120, but then Zishi texted me like she'd read my mind. Got it out of her. It's just an aphrodisiac. Just let him calm down on his own. Do not take him to the hospital. All our family are doctors if you do. Zi Xiao's reputation will be ruined for good. Though she wasn't lying about one thing, Zi Xiao was a total wreck when you two broke up. That's why I'm being so nice to you now, you know? Before I could even reply, another text popped up. I'm taking your classmate away for a little education. You'll have to stay and take care of Zi Xiao tonight. Looks like she prepared plenty of toys for you two. Have fun exploring. Sis, you're really such a shameless old gossip. That said, my eyes still drifted involuntarily to the bath towel around his waist. I hadn't noticed in my panic earlier, but now that I looked, my face instantly turned bright red. Zi Xiao must have been burning up, because he rolled over, and the towel slid off, falling to the floor with a soft thud. I saw everything. All of it. Oh my God. Back in high school, when he'd insisted on holding back, saying he was afraid I wouldn't be able to handle it, I thought he was just being sweet. Turns out he'd been telling the truth. This was more than I could handle. My face flaming, I picked up a clean towel and covered him with it, then rushed to the bathroom to fetch a basin of cold water to cool him down. But as soon as the damp towel touched his chest, he grabbed my wrist. His grip was so strong that I stumbled, catching myself with my elbows on either side of his body, barely managing to stay balanced. Zi Xiao opened his eyes halfway, his voice slurred. Ticklish. I tried to soothe him. I'll stop wiping, let go of my hand, okay? Instead of letting go, he pulled me down, his dark eyes locking onto mine, unblinking. Zi Xiao mumbled, Am I dreaming again? Did I dream about you again? My throat felt tight, and my eyes stung. I whispered, It's not a dream. I'm here. I'm right beside you. He pulled me closer, clinging to me like a lifeline, still half asleep. Don't leave. I feel terrible. I said softly, I won't leave. I'll never leave you again. I lay there with him for a long time, until I eventually drifted off to sleep too. When I woke up, the room was pitch black. My bulky down jacket had been taken off, and I was covered with a soft blanket. My hand reached out instinctively to find him, but the space beside me was empty. Panic surged through me. I scrambled to my knees, fumbling around for the light switch, but I misjudged the distance and fell off the bed with a thud, the pain shooting up my spine. The bathroom light flicked on suddenly, and Zi Xiao rushed out, drawn by the noise. By the faint glow coming from the bathroom, I could see that his hair was still damp, and he was wearing a bathrobe, loosely tied at the waist. Oh wow. His voice was filled with worry. Wanna, what happened? I whispered. I'm under your feet. I think I hurt my tailbone when I fell. Zi Xiao flipped on the bedroom light, then slid his arms under my shoulders and knees, lifting me up effortlessly. But he didn't set me down right away. The bright light flooded the room, and I could see that his eyes were glistening, his cheeks and nose still flushed pink. I remembered what Zishi had texted me about the drug's effects, apparently. It started to kick in 2 hours after taking it. I couldn't help but shrink back a little. Put me down, I said. I'll be fine after lying down for a bit. Zizhao gently laid me on the bed, but his fingers lingered on my skin. Lying down won't fix this, he said. Let me massage it for you. His fingers were warm, pressing carefully on the spot where my tailbone hurt. But somehow, it felt like he was touching me everywhere, but the sore spot. My face burned, and I grabbed his hand to stop him. Don't massage it anymore. It doesn't hurt now. Xiao's eyes darkened. He flipped our hands over, lacing his fingers through mine, and guided my hand to his body. I'm the one who hurts now, he said softly. Can you massage me, please? I scrambled away from him, begging. I really can't. Zizhao cut me off, his voice low. Your best friend called me, said she had a way to make your parents accept me. That's why I came here. I never thought she'd do something like this to me. So he'd known all along, and he'd never once pressured me about it. Guilt washed over me. I'm sorry. Zizhao wrapped his arm around me, pulling me into his embrace, and kissed my eyes soft, gentle kisses, full of suppressed desire. How are you going to make it up to me? He asked. I hesitated, racking my brain. What do you want? I'll buy you a new game. I never got to finish saying Game Gear, because he picked up something from the knitstand and held it up in front of me. It was one of the things Qin Siwei had left behind. Brand new, still in its packaging glinting coldly under the light, made of metal. Zizhao leaned in closer, his voice a low growl. Let's play a game. I tried to escape on instinct, but he dragged me back, pinning me down. His dark eyes locked onto mine like a predator eyeing its prey. Wanna, he said. Be good for me. Zizhao flipped off the light. The world dissolved into darkness around me. Only he was real, tangible, solid. He was like a ship in a stormy sea, carrying me through waves of pleasure and longing, as if we were sailing toward the end of the world together. But at the very last second, he stopped using a willpower I didn't know he possessed. Breathless, I clung to his waist, murmuring, Why did you stop? Zizhao kissed my forehead, his lips warm against my skin, his voice filled with restraint. We'll wait until our wedding night. Zizhao's birthday fell in the first lunar month. I planned to pay New Year's visits to my aunt's house first, then sneak out in the evening. The whole family was bustling with activity, some playing mahjong, others watching reruns of the Spring Festival Gala, chattering away non-stop. I was completely focused on entertaining my little niece, when my aunt suddenly steered the conversation toward me. It's a tradition in our family, no dating before high school. After high school, we can't wait to get you married right away. Wanna, do you have a boyfriend yet? Before I could answer, Mum jumped in. Not yet, but her dad introduced someone to her. They're getting along great, aren't they? She was talking about Tang He. I hesitated, then mumbled, Yeah. Dad, who was in the middle of a mahjong game, somehow heard every word and shouted, Honey, Tang He didn't go home for the New Year. Give him a call and ask him to come over for dinner. My aunt, always eager for some drama, chimed in. Hurry. Bring him over so we can meet him and check him out. I was about to sneakily text Tang He, begging him not to come, when Mom's phone call already went through. Mum talked him into it with a mix of reasoning and warm persuasion. Tang He tried to decline several times, but he couldn't resist the onslaught of a middle-aged aunt's hospitality, and finally agreed reluctantly. When he arrived, he was impeccably polite, carrying a pile of gifts and greeting each elder respectfully, leaving them all thoroughly impressed. To top it off, he was wearing a black coat and gold-rimmed glasses, looking utterly elegant and suave, much to the delight of my female cousins. Everyone else was shooting me envious looks, but I was squirming in my seat, feeling like I was sitting on pins and needles. Tang He was seated next to me and whispered, I originally wanted to refuse, but I couldn't say no to such a warm invitation. I shot him a look that said, Brother, I feel you. After all, I'd heard the whole conversation. Mom's persuasive powers were simply unbeatable for any ordinary person. Meanwhile, Zizhao's birthday dinner was already underway. He texted me, asking when I'd arrive. I opened the video he'd sent. A group of people were shouting in unison, Sister-in-law, hurry up. The shock made my hand slip, and I accidentally exited WeChat. Tang He noticed my flustered movement and asked softly, Your boyfriend? I felt a little embarrassed. Yeah. It's his birthday today. I need to sneak out for a bit. Tang He nodded and didn't say anything more. But this guy was truly a lifesaver. He helped me cover my tracks. I said I was going to visit a teacher. Amid my aunt's teasing remarks like, visiting a teacher? Why don't you two go together? Tang He volunteered to stay behind and help make dumplings. I gave him a grateful look that said, "You're a real bro." And he tilted his chin at me, signaling he got the message. My mischievous little cousins noticed our silent exchange and snickered in unison. "Sis, your eye contact is so intense, it's practically sparkling." I quickly slipped on my shoes and made a run for it. Honestly, shippers are terrifying. By the time I rushed to the private room, everyone was already drinking. The whole group yelled that I was late and demanded I drink a forfeit. 3 glasses of red wine were poured and placed in front of me, glinting under the lights. Zishao was sitting at the head of the table, a faint smile on his lips, saying nothing. I had no choice but to reach for the glass. But I'd barely taken a sip when Zishao snatched it away from me. Someone called out, "Brother Zhao, that's not fair. You make us drink for being late, but you're letting sister-in-law off the hook." Zishao shot them a glance. "Who said I'm letting her off?" He lifted the glass, downed the wine in one gulp, then stepped closer to me, wrapped an arm around my waist, and kissed me deeply. A new kind of forfeit. Warm, soft, and sweet, the taste of wine lingering between our lips. Some wine dribbled down the corners of our mouths. I felt lightheaded from lack of oxygen, clinging to his shirt to stay steady on my feet. Only when he'd finished all 3 glasses did Zishao finally let me go. Through the glass decorations, I caught a glimpse of my own flushed cheeks. But it wasn't from the wine. Most of it had been drunk by Zishao, who cheated on my behalf. The reason my face was so red was, well, let's just say it was a French kiss. After drinking too much, we started playing Truth or Dare. I nestled against Zishao's side, twirling his fingers lazily. I get drunk easily, and once I do, my head feels all fuzzy. I was starting to feel sleepy. Suddenly, I heard everyone cheering and clapping excitedly. I opened my eyes drowsily and asked, "What's going on?" Zishao held up the dice and told me, "Wanna, I got dared." I looked at him blankly. "So?" He curved his lips into a smile. "So they want me to eat cake off your body?" My heart skipped a beat, and the alcohol in my system instantly sobered up. After my vehement protests, they finally abandoned their more lewd idea, but changed the condition, demanding we kiss in the snow. It was still snowing outside. The cold made me shiver. Zishao took off his scarf and wrapped it snugly around my neck. The troublemakers couldn't wait to hand over the cake. Zishao scooped up a little bit, held my chin gently, and slowly spread it across my face. It was cold, and I flinched instinctively. Zishao chuckled softly. "Wanna, this is just the beginning." He cut the back of my head and started eating the cake off my face seriously. The snow was slippery underfoot. I clutched the hem of his coat to keep from falling over. My heart was pounding wildly in my chest. The alcohol in my veins spurred a bold thought, urging me to kiss him. I stood on tiptoes, found his lips, and pressed mine against them. Zishao froze for a second, then quickly tightened his arms around my waist, taking control of the kiss. The crowd erupted in cheers. Someone was even taking photos furiously with their phone. Amidst the laughter and noise, I thought I heard Mom shouting my name angrily. I dismissed it as a hallucination till Zishao pulled away from me. I turned my head slowly. Under the street lamp, I saw my parents, my aunts and uncles, my older and younger cousins, and Tang He. The whole group was standing there, holding fireworks and firecrackers, staring at me in utter disbelief. "Someone please save me." Under the watchful eyes of all my relatives, I walked step by step toward Mom, whose eyes were practically shooting fire. I even heard my little cousin whispering to her sister, "Sis One is so cool. Both guys are so handsome," only to have her mouth covered by her sister. Mom was on the verge of exploding. She hissed through gritted teeth, leaving Tang He at home to sneak out and meet Zishao behind our backs. "Suwana, you've really outdone yourself." I wanted to die on the spot. I forced a smile that looked worse than a frown and said, "Mom, would you believe me if I said I was sleepwalking?" Mom ignored me completely. She marched forward and stood in front of Zishao. She put on a fake smile and said, Zijiao, just the other day I was chatting with your mom. She said there's an ex-girlfriend you can't forget. Isn't that right? Zijiao's friends exchanged confused answers, clearly at a loss. One bold guy spoke up. Auntie, Brother Zhao's ex-girlfriend is actually... only to be cut off by a warning glare from Zijiao. Zijiao turned back to Mom and said politely, Yes, Auntie. Mom was seething with anger, her voice sharp with irritation. If you still have someone else in your heart, Zijiao, then leave Suwana alone. She's too trusting and easy to fool. We're taking her home to teach her a lesson. You two shouldn't see each other anymore. Zijiao stood rooted to the spot, his eyes lowered, enduring her scolding silently. When had he ever bowed his head like this before? I whispered, Mum, ... please stop. Mum shook off my hand, shot me a fierce look, and hissed, I'm only letting you off the hook because there are so many people here. When we get home, you're going to explain everything to me properly. Mom half dragged and half pulled me away. I kept glancing back, only to see Zijiao standing alone in the wind and snow. His friends gathered around him, trying to talk to him, but he ignored all of them, just watching me leave quietly. My parents are people who care deeply about face. Even though they were furious, they forced smiles back onto their faces and shouted for everyone to set off the fireworks. I just took out my phone to text Zijiao when Mom snatched it away from me. She warned me sternly. This nonsense of leading two guys on you. You better stop right now before it's too late. I stood there dejectedly, watching everyone else have fun, some having snowball fights, others setting off fireworks. My little cousin probably took pity on me. She came over to me under the pretense of giving me a sparkler and whispered, Siswan Aeu. UH. Well, both guys are so handsome. You've got great taste. I sighed glumly. I only picked the one outside. She winked, thinking she'd gotten the hint. No need to pretend with me. I love Oreos. Even if you picked both, I wouldn't mind at all. It took me a second to realize what she meant by Oreos. When I saw her mischievous grin, it finally clicked. I couldn't help but laugh, even though I was annoyed. I kicked her lightly. Go play with your fireworks. She scurried off like a frightened little mouse. On the other side of the yard, I saw my parents talking to Tang He. He looked a little awkward, but he nodded along politely anyway. When they finally finished their conversation, my aunt dragged my parents off to set off firecrackers, freeing Tang He to walk over to me. I said, I'm sorry for dragging you into this mess. Tang He laughed. It was certainly a novel experience, but you don't have to apologize. He shrugged. Seeing you and your boyfriend under the street lamp just now. It was a really nice scene. I was so embarrassed I wanted to dig a hole and hide. I watched my parents walk farther away, then suddenly thought of something. Can I borrow your phone? Once again, Tang He helped me cover my tracks. It looked like we were just chatting, but in reality, I'd secretly put on the earphones and was calling Zijiao. When Zijiao answered the call from an unknown number, his voice was cold. He was clearly in a bad mood. He asked icily, Who is this? I lowered my voice. It's me, Suwana. Mum took my phone away. His tone softened instantly, filled with urgency. Are you okay? Did Auntie give you a hard time? If it gets too bad, just tell her I forced you to come. The weather was freezing cold, but my heart felt warm, so warm. Tang He was still standing in front of me, so I couldn't say much. I just said, I'm fine. I'm sorry you had to go through this tonight. Zijiao pretended to be fierce. You dummy. Apologizing to me? I'm going to spank you when you get home. I played along, asking teasingly, Where are you going to spank me? He laughed softly. Where do you think? Even though I'd expected his reply, my cheeks still turned bright red. Tang, he cleared his throat lightly. I looked up and saw my parents walking back after setting off the firecrackers. I quickly said, I have to hang up now. Zijiao said, Okay, you go ahead. Just as I was about to press the end button, I heard him call my name. Wana. His voice was deep and gentle. Leave everything to me. I'll handle it. Don't worry. His words seemed to travel through the invisible electromagnetic waves, slowly sinking into my heart. I was grounded for the rest of the winter vacation. He tactfully told my parents that due to their age difference, he didn't think they were a good match. He also gallantly added that this decision had nothing to do with seeing me with Zishao that night. He'd been thinking about it for a long time, but just hadn't known how to bring it up. He thought he'd saved me from disaster. But little did he know that the real problem wasn't him at all. My parents weren't just upset about me leading 2 guys on. They were mortified that it had happened in front of so many relatives. Dad was relatively calm about it, but Mum looked like she wanted to hang a sign around her neck that said, "I failed to raise my daughter properly." I didn't dare to make a sound, all the while wondering to myself, which is a worse offense, dating in high school or leading 2 guys on? Maybe I should just come clean about everything. But I was afraid Mom would go off on a tangent, grilling me about every little detail of my high school relationship. Even though Zizhao and I never crossed the line, we definitely came very close to it. I went back and forth like this, and before I knew it, the winter vacation was almost over, and I still hadn't been able to see Zizhao in person. On the way to the high-speed rail station, Mum finally handed my phone back to me. She said, "Technically, you're a college student now. We shouldn't meddle in your love life. But when it comes to matters of morality, your father and I have a responsibility to teach you right from wrong, no matter how old you are." I took the phone dejectedly. She sighed. "Once you go back to school, you'll be in the same city as Zi Zhao again, and there's nothing I can do to stop you. But no matter what you choose, don't pick someone who still has feelings for his ex. You'll only end up getting hurt, Wanna." I clutched the phone tightly and hung my head. As soon as I stepped out of the high-speed rail station, I saw Zizhao waiting for me. I grabbed my heavy suitcase and ran straight toward him. He opened his arms, lifted me up by the legs, and held me securely in his embrace. We stayed like that for a long time. Passers-by smiled as they walked past us, seemingly charmed by the sight. I finally felt a little embarrassed and whispered, "Put me down, you'll get tired." He chuckled. "I'm not tired. I'm in great shape." My cheeks flushed, and I punched him playfully. He leaned in close to my ear and murmured, "Besides, I've been waiting to hold you like this for a long time." Soon enough, he proved those words with his actions. The hotel room door was kicked shut with his foot. His hands were far too occupied for anything else. We kissed again and again, in fits and starts. My head was spinning from lack of oxygen, and my whole body felt like it was buzzing with electricity. Half a month apart, it had felt like an eternity, long enough for every single cell in my body to scream with longing for him. The last thing I remembered was him carrying me to the bathroom to take a shower, then patiently drying my hair afterward. I just rested my head on his lap, curled up against his waist, and fell asleep, the most sound sleep I'd had in a long, long time. Our class had the misfortune of being selected for the provincial physical fitness test in the spring semester. Simply put, we had to run the 2,400-meter race. Again, the same one we'd already run last semester. The notice came out of nowhere. Before that, I pulled all-nighters for a whole week to finish a class assignment. The day I actually stood on the track, I finally understood what worse than death felt like. My heart was pounding furiously in my chest. My stomach was churning, and my ears were ringing so loudly I couldn't hear anything else, only the sound of my own heartbeat, echoing endlessly. I fainted the moment I crossed the finish line. I'd passed the test, but I ended up being rushed to the hospital. My classmates later told me that the PE teacher had panicked and called an ambulance immediately, terrified that something serious had happened to me. When I woke up, it was already the next day. The first thing I noticed was a string tied around my wrist. The other end was clutched tightly in Zijiao's hand. He was such a tall man, yet he was curled up uncomfortably in a tiny chair, dozing off with dark circles under his eyes. The elderly lady in the next bed saw that I was awake and nodded towards Zijiao. "Your boyfriend was afraid he'd fall asleep and miss you waking up, so he tied that string to your wrist. That way, if you moved even a little, he'd wake up right away to take care of you." I wanted to laugh, but my eyes felt wet instead. I whispered, "Silly boy. If I didn't move, he'd never know I was awake even if I was. Or if I tossed and turned in my sleep, he'd wake up for no reason, worrying about me." It was such a simple, silly thing. But someone as smart as him, how could he not have thought of that? Or maybe he did know, but he was just so worried about me that he resorted to this ridiculous method anyway. I got out of bed quietly and knelt down in front of Zixiao's chair. Another grandma in the ward chimed in. Boys who know how to take care of people like this are hard to come by these days. He didn't close his eyes all night running back and forth, fetching things for you, checking on you every 5 minutes. He was so afraid you'd feel the slightest bit uncomfortable. Zixiao was still asleep. His brows furrowed slightly, as if he couldn't even rest easy in his dreams. Someone in the next ward pressed the nurse call button, and the bell at the nurse's station rang loudly. Ding dong! Zixiao jolted awake instantly, jumping to his feet. When he saw the empty hospital bed, he panicked and shouted, Where is she? Where did she go? I tugged gently at the hem of his pants. He looked down at me, stared for 2 seconds, then exploded. What are you doing out of bed? Without another word, he lifted me up bridal style and carried me back to the bed. The grandma smiled kindly at us, and I felt my face grow hot with embarrassment. But Zixiao didn't care about them at all. He tucked me into the blankets carefully, tucking the edges in snugly around me. Then he dragged his chair over, sat down, and started scolding me sternly. Student Suwana, your reckless disregard for your own health is completely unacceptable. I'm putting you on official notice. I lay silently under the covers, letting him lecture me. As he went on, his voice started to crack. When I got here, you were lying in this bed. Your face as white as a sheet. Your lips blue. Do you have any idea how scared I was? I propped myself up halfway, wanting to look into his eyes, but he turned his face away. Don't look at me. His eyes were red, really red. I whispered, I'm sorry. Zixiao looked like he was still fuming. He reached out and pinched my cheek lightly. One of these days, you're going to give me a heart attack. I snuggled deeper into the bed and patted the empty space next to me, signaling for him to lie down and rest. But Zixiao, ever the gentleman, refused. Nice try, but I don't hit on sick people. The grandmas laughed out loud. I was so annoyed I grabbed a pillow and threw it at him. Get out of here. I was just trying to let you sleep, you haven't closed your eyes all night. Zixiao caught the pillow with a grin, leaned over and kissed me on the forehead. If you sleep well, then I'll sleep well. I'm a man, I can tough it out for a little while longer. He patted the non-existent dust off his clothes and stood up. I'm off to buy you breakfast. Porridge or soybean milk. The doctor said you can only eat liquid food right now. I glanced at the clock. Where are you going to find breakfast at this hour? Zixiao waved a hand dismissively as he walked toward the door, his voice lazy and confident. Don't you worry about that. I'll make it appear out of thin air if I have to. Suddenly he froze in his tracks. I followed his gaze and saw my parents standing at the door, watching us. I had no idea how long they'd been there. I scrambled to get out of bed, but Dad's voice boomed, stopping me in my tracks. Don't move. Just stay right there. I was terrified they'd give Zixiao a hard time, but I didn't dare to disobey Dad. I quickly explained, He's just here to take care of me. Please don't be hard on him. My parents didn't say a word. I had no choice but to bite the bullet and ask, When did you guys get here? Please come in and sit down. Zixiao was quick to cooperate, pulling out chairs for them. They walked into the ward, but neither of them sat down. My heart ached for Zixiao. I shot him a meaningful look, signaling for him to make a run for it while he still could. He clearly saw it, but he didn't move an inch. He just stood guard by the door, looking like he was ready to rush over and rescue me at a moment's notice. He still didn't understand my parents. They had sharp tongues but soft hearts. Now that I was sick like this, they'd never do anything to upset me. Sure enough, the moment Mom saw my pale face and the back of my hand covered in needle pricks, her eyes turned red. Why do you never take care of yourself? Dad was still a little angry, muttering to himself. Your school is so inefficient. This happened yesterday afternoon, and they only bothered to call us this morning. It's a good thing you're okay if something serious had happened to you. I'd have given them a piece of my mind. Mom stroked my face gently, her voice full of concern. Are you comfortable staying in this hospital? Should we transfer you to a better one? Are the doctors and nurses taking good care of you? I said. Zixiao took care of me all night yesterday. Neither of them said anything in response. The grandmas in the ward had clearly picked up on the tension between us. They exchanged a look, then played dumb and spoke up. "Oh my, you've got such a wonderful son-in-law. He didn't sleep a wink all night running around, fetching things, checking on her constantly. He was so afraid your daughter would suffer even the tiniest bit of discomfort." The other grandma chimed in with a smile. "If my granddaughter had a boyfriend like that, I'd be over the moon." Mom still didn't say anything, but Dad finally spoke up, turning to Zijao. "You must have had a long night yesterday. Thank you for taking care of her." Zijao looked stunned for a moment, then seemed to snap out of it and said, "You're welcome, sir. It was the least I could do." Seeing that my parents' attitudes had softened, I quickly said to Zijao, "You can go buy breakfast now. I want sweet soybean milk extra sugar, please." Zijao nodded and walked out, closing the door behind him. The two grandmas took the hint and stood up, supporting each other. They said they were going for their morning rehabilitation exercises, thoughtfully leaving the ward to our family. After asking about my condition in detail, an awkward silence fell over the ward. In the end, Mum and I spoke up at the exact same time. "You and Zijao ... Actually, Mum said, "You go first." I bit my lip and said, "The ex-girlfriend that Ziao can't forget. It's me." And I made it clear to Brother Tang from the very beginning that we were just friends. So I wasn't leading two guys on, and Zijao wasn't in love with two people at the same time. Mom looked shocked. "Why didn't you tell us this earlier?" I hesitated, then admitted, "Because Zijao and I started dating in high school." Mom looked like she wanted to strangle me. I shrank back into the bed, looking wronged. "I'm a sick person, Dad. Are you just going to let her yell at me?" Dad cleared his throat awkwardly and took a sip of water, his classic delaying tactic. Mum chased him out of the ward, then turned back to me and asked, her voice serious, "When you two were dating in high school, did you two ... cross the line?" My face turned so red I felt like it was on fire. "No. How could you think that about me? How could she read my mind so well?" "Okay, fine, I thought about crossing the line. But Zijao had always stopped me before we could." Mum finally looked slightly relieved. I studied her expression, then shamelessly snuggled up to her. "It's not like you lost anything, right? I still got into university A, even though I was dating in high school. And now you've got a son-in-law who's known you since he was a kid. That way more reliable than some random guy I met after the college entrance exam." Mum shot me a warning look. "Don't to get cocky just because you got what you wanted." But from the way she said it, I knew she'd basically accepted Zixiao. When Zixiao came back with a big bag of breakfast, I was shocked. "I can't eat all this," he grinned. "Uncle and Auntie took the high-speed rail here early in the morning, worrying about you non-stop. They definitely didn't have time to eat breakfast properly. I bought this for all of you to share." Dad's expression softened even more. He patted Zixiao on the shoulder. "When we arrived, we saw you taking care of Wana." He paused for a moment, then chose not to finish his sentence. The meaning was clear enough. He just said, "You should stay and have breakfast with us." Zixiao looked at me in surprise. I smiled and nodded at him. He finally relaxed and sat down, making polite small talk with my parents. My parents were both busy people who'd taken time off work to come see me. Once they confirmed I was going to be okay, they bought tickets to go back home. The nurses had ordered me to stay in bed to rest, so Zixiao volunteered to take them to the high-speed rail station. Watching the three of them walk away together, I felt a flood of emotions, imagination, joy, and a strange sense of nostalgia. When Zixiao and I used to sneak around outside my neighborhood, stealing kisses in the shadows, we'd never once dreamed that one day we'd be able to stand in front of my parents together, openly and proudly. I'll never know what kind of brainwashing my parents did, but by the next winter vacation, when we celebrated the New Year again, my cousins were already asking me when Zixiao and I were getting married. Without any discussion, they'd rewritten the scandalous story of Su Wan, a leading two guys on, into the romantic tale of Su Wan and Z, childhood sweethearts who found their way back to each other. This time, it was Zixiao who showed up at my house, carrying a pile of New Year's gifts. It was his first time visiting my home openly and officially. He even pretended to be polite, and asked where the bathroom was. As if I didn't know, this guy had snuck into my house countless times back in high school. My aunts showered Zhao with praise, gushing about how handsome he was, how well-educated he was, how perfect he was in every way. After pretending to be modest for a second, he quickly added, "But I think my best quality is my excellent taste in women." Everyone froze for a second, then my male cousins burst into laughter. Mom couldn't stand it anymore. She pulled me aside quietly and whispered, "Tell him to stop being so cocky. Nia Niao and Yu Yu are still in school. We don't want them getting any ideas about puppy love." I nodded and said, Okay, but secretly thought to myself, "Mum, you're worrying for nothing. Chances are, those two know way more about love than I ever did at their age." Watching Zhao win over every single member of my family, young and old, male and female, with his charm, I stared up at the ceiling and thought, as long as the villain is handsome, the audience's moral compass will follow his looks. Truer words were never spoken. Only my little cousin refused to let go of the past. "It is a shame you and Brother Tang weren't actually a thing. I was so rooting for you two to be an Oreo couple." Zhao was sitting right next to me. He raised an eyebrow and asked, his tone full of meaning, "You like Oreos, huh?" I quickly kicked my little cousin and said, "Oreos this. Oreos that. Have you finished your winter vacation homework yet? I'll tell Auntie on you if you don't get back to it." My cousin pulled a long face and trudged back to her room to finish her homework. Feeling triumphant, I opened a bag of finger biscuits and held it out to Zhao. "Want some?" He glanced at the biscuits, then at me, a playful smirk on his lips. "You like them small, huh?" Suddenly, the biscuits in my mouth didn't taste so good anymore. But in front of my elders, Zhao toned down all his teasing and acted like the perfect gentleman. He even put on an apron and helped make dumplings with everyone. He was actually pretty good at it, way better than me. My aunt sang his praises. Nowadays, it's so rare to find young men who can cook. Zhao smiled modestly and accepted all the compliments graciously. Of course, I wasn't going to expose his little secret, that to learn how to cook this one dish for his New Year's visit, he'd pestered his mom to teach him for over 10 days, and even accidentally burned a hole in his down jacket in the process. The music from the Spring Festival Gala started playing, signaling the arrival of a new year. Thanks to his sheer determination and thick skin, Zhao ignored his mom's endless phone calls and stubbornly stayed at my house to stay up until midnight. My family was more than happy to have him, but every time my female cousins walked past me, they'd tease me. "Wanna, your boyfriend is so clingy." Grandma boiled all the dumplings and served a bowl to each of us. Zhao was the lucky one who bit into the dumpling with the hidden coin. Everyone cheered and urged him to make a wish. A new year, a new coin, a new wish. It was said to be the most powerful kind of wish. Zhao clasped his hands together and shouted his wish loud and clear. "I wish I can marry Su Wan as soon as possible." My male cousins hooted and hollered, "Bravo! Brother Zhao, you're the man." Zhao bowed humbly. Thank you. I was stunned, speechless. I glanced nervously at my parents, only to see them laughing so hard their faces hurt, completely unlike the cold, angry expressions they'd had before. I finally relaxed and punched Zhao playfully, annoyed but secretly happy. "Can't you be serious for once?" Zhao took my hand, pulled me into his arms, and whispered in my ear, "This is my serious wish, Wanna. I want to marry you as soon as possible." Outside the window, brilliant fireworks exploded in the sky, blooming one after another like flowers. Everyone ran downstairs to watch the fireworks. Everyone except us. Zhao pulled me toward the balcony. Thousands of lights twinkled in the distance, stretching as far as the eye could see. We kissed, surrounded by the sound of fireworks exploding all around us. The boy I'd had a crush on when I was 16. The boy who told me he liked me back when I was 17. We'd parted ways briefly when we were 18, then found our way back to each other when we were 19. Life would have many, many decades ahead, but in my second decade of life, the most important person in the world to me was Zhao. He was my entire youth. All my love, all my romance, they all belonged to him. The end.